Good morning and welcome to today's International Space Station update. On board, the crew of Expedition 30 is busying themselves with some scientific experiment work and maintenance activities as they move out of an off-duty day. On board, you can see in the center of your screen, NASA astronaut and Expedition 30 commander Dan Burbank. Joining him are Russian cosmonauts Anton Shkaplerov and Anatoly Ivanishin. This is Burbank's third flight into space. His first two were shuttle missions, including STS-106, which prepared the International Space Station for the arrival of its first permanent crew. And then this is the first space flight for both Shkaplerov and Ivanishin. On board today, Dan Burbank participated in a public affairs event talking with CBS News in Florida. And then following that, he is doing a range of experiment work today, including some repair to the International Space Station agricultural camera. This camera is mounted in the Window Observational Research Facility on board the station, and its function is to take images in both visible and infrared light of vegetated areas in the northern Great Plains region of the United States. This includes growing crops, grasslands, and forests, and it is also being used to study dynamic Earth processes around the world. And these phenomena include things like melting glaciers, ecosystem responses to seasonal changes, human impacts, and rapid response monitoring of any natural disasters. In addition to that, Dan Burbank did some work on the passages experiment, which the technical term for that is scaling body-related actions in the absence of gravity. And this is a test that interprets visual information, or rather how the astronauts' retinas interpret visual information in microgravity. And here you see Commander Dan Burbank working with that passages experiment. What that's doing is testing for effects of weightlessness on estimates of visual distance and perceived eye height. And these bodily functions can be used to calibrate physical dimensions in a person's visual field, determining such easy things as the passability of a doorway. You can see him setting up this experiment. It's a box similar to what you might see at your eye doctor that the astronauts then look through and perform a number of exercises. Also on board, Russian cosmonauts Anton Shkaplerov and Anatoly Ivanishin participated in a Russian public affairs event, talking to some of their Russian media. Shkaplerov then did some work on the cryogem refrigerator, removing that and replacing some components. The rest of his day was taken up by some crew orientation time as he continues to adapt to the microgravity environment on board the International Space Station. He and the other crew members also will get in their 2 hours of scheduled exercise. This of course combats some of the negative effects of the microgravity environment on both their bone density and muscle structures. Shkaplerov is also doing some work on the Electron, which is the oxygen generation system on the Russian segment of the International Space Station. This of course is one of the important items on board the International Space Station and part of their dissimilar redundancy, which is a practice on board to ensure that there are always at least two pieces of equipment that perform the same function but in various ways. The US segment has the oxygen generation system. Some other items that also employ this dissimilar redundancy policy are the CDRA, which is the carbon dioxide removal assembly on board the US segment, and the Russian Vozduk. Rounding out the crew, Anatoly Ivanishin again participated in that Russian PAO event, and then much of his day will be taken up with maintenance work on the Russian toilet system. The crew will end their day with another daily planning conference as they talk to ground controllers in the flight control room. They will then move into their pre-sleep period where they do any wrap-up work for the day's activities or get-ahead work for tomorrow's plan before moving into sleep.